Hi everyone, cherryvintage.com here. This tutorial, tips, and advice video is geared toward the picker and reseller who is unfamiliar with vintage costume jewelry. My inspiration for this video are my men picker reseller treasure hunter subscribers who don't know what to look for and aren't even sure what most pieces of jewelry are called. If that sounds like you, then stay tuned because this is for you. Before I get started talking about the vintage costume jewelry tips in basic terms, I'd like to recommend this book. It's a value guide. The author is Julia C. Carroll. Her last name is spelled Carroll. And she started selling on eBay many years ago and now has her own website. She's become an authority on vintage costume jewelry identification and values. This is a really interesting book. It's easy to read. It's full of photos and vintage costume jewelry and also accurate price ranges. This book is from 2004 and I bought it new then at $25 on eBay. I noticed used copies are selling for $30 and up. You also can find it at probably your local library. Her newer books are 202 and 303. Before looking at these pieces and learning some terms, I'd like to share with you some observation and tips regarding selling vintage costume jewelry on eBay. They come from my personal experience and the experience of my colleagues who have sold more vintage jewelry than I do and earn an annual income of $35,000 to $100,000 selling collectibles on eBay. My first tip is, in general, plan to take a slow dime over a fast nickel. In general, the eBay sellers who realize a medium to higher price on their vintage costume jewelry let their items sit in the eBay store until the right buyer finds it. Like my friends, I set my price at the higher end and start to bring it down to the mid-price range the longer that it stays in my store. I do take best offer on everything, but I set it to automatically decline anything lower than my rock bottom price. That way, my customer knows if they bought it or not. Usually customers do not want to wait for the time that it would take for me to counter offer it. And I don't like to have to do a counter offer because it really just wastes time. My second tip is something you might wonder is, why do you see price ranges for the same piece of jewelry in the same condition? For example, why does this brooch on eBay, if you look through the sold, sell from $10 to $40 on eBay when it's in the same condition? My answer could be that some sellers are happy to buy something for $3 and then go ahead and sell it for $10. Another reason is some sellers have no idea what they are selling and what it is worth. Another answer could be many who buy that brooch from you for $10 are buying it under their eBay buying ID, and then they're reselling it on eBay for $40 on their eBay selling ID, or their website, or their brick and mortar store. So then I guess the next question would be, how do you get the higher price? And my answer to that would be patient, keep your store full of 200 or more quality items, and you will see good weekly sales. It's cyclical. Also, customers are willing to pay more to knowledgeable sellers with good reputations. This is a fact. Know what you have, when it was made, the history of the piece, rate the jewelry condition fairly, maintain excellent feedback, stay in contact with your customers, and ship the item out securely and fast. Have a generous return policy. Sellers who continuously do this often are able to sell their item for more than other eBay sellers. Okay, tip number 3. I don't often buy at estate sales or auctions. This is because the investment cost can be high. There is often fierce competition. You have not only the high-end sellers who will pay $200 for a necklace to resell it for $275, but you often have collectors there who will pay top dollar to add to their collection. Even though it is just costume vintage jewelry, most costume vintage jewelry from 1920 to the 1960s are investments. They gain value the longer that you hold on to them. This is why I don't sell off very much of the vintage costume jewelry that I own. I usually buy at garage sales, flea markets, church or charity sales, and thrift stores. It's easy to find a piece of vintage costume jewelry, a good piece, for 25 cents to $5 and resell it for $25 to $100 on eBay if you are patient and you know what to buy. Tip number 4. Vintage jewelry often sells best during holidays. Tip number 5. A bigger profit can often be made by selling less desirable 1970s through 1990s vintage jewelry in lots ranging for $25 to $35. Tip number 6. In general, signed pieces sell better than unsigned pieces. Just a very general rule, and here are some brands that unless they are showy pieces, unless they are 1960s or earlier, these brands often do not sell well. Avon, Trifari, including Crown Trifari, Monet, Napier, Marvella, and some Sarah Coventry. This is largely due to the fact that some of these companies have sold off their names and other manufacturers, and then the quality was reduced, and a lot of it started to become made in China in the 80s, and so the materials used just were crappy compared to the former materials used. So again, I'm not saying never buy these brands. I'm just saying be very careful when you buy those brands, because only certain pieces of those brands are going to sell for 25 bucks or more on eBay. Tip number 7. If you're just starting out, try to buy items that are in very good to excellent condition. Now, I can talk about how to rate your jewelry in another video. When you're looking at earrings, try to pay $1 or less, so it really doesn't hurt you much if you've made a mistake. Bracelets, brooches, sometimes called pins, necklaces, try to aim for not more than $3 for a signed piece. Alright, tip number 8, my last tip. These items have always done well for me on eBay. Rhinestone jewelry that is prong set, and I'll show you what that means in a moment. Figurative jewelry, that means jewelry that looks like person, place, or thing. So, like jewelry that looks like a cat, a dog, a turtle, an owl, a horse, clowns, ballerinas. Also, most importantly, this has always been a good seller for me, and it's a hot trend for the last 2 years and still is. Look for over-the-top jewelry. By that I mean something that like actress Elizabeth Taylor would wear, aka statement pieces. And good keywords on eBay are big, chunky, runway. Runway means something like a model would wear, something that's over the top.